All right, welcome to the Explainer. So, how does a leader actually stay in power for more than a quarter of a century? It's a big question. Today, we're going to dive into the official record of a presidency just like that in post Soviet Uzbekistan. We're going to unpack the documented mechanics, the elections, the referendums, and even some pretty unique constitutional changes that really defined an entire era.
Okay, so our story kicks off at a huge turning point. We're in March 1990, and Islam Karimov is elected president of the Uzbek SSR, so still part of the Soviet Union. But then, just a little over a year later, everything changes. The USSR is gone, and he's elected again, but this time he's the first ever president of the brand new independent Republic of Uzbekistan. So right there, that's the moment a Soviet leader transforms into the founding head of a new nation.
So let's look at how this new presidency got started. It all begins, as you'd expect, with the country's very first election. Right, so independence is official. The next logical step? You gotta establish your leadership. And that's exactly what happened on December 29th, 1991. Uzbekistan holds its first ever presidential election as a free sovereign nation. This was a really foundational moment, setting the course for its political future. And the result? Well, it was a landslide. No other way to put it. Islam Karimov, running with the People's Democratic Party, just cleans up, securing the presidency with a massive 86% of the vote. And just like that, his first official term was underway. Now, that first term was supposed to be for 5 years, according to the Constitution, but it didn't quite end there. Let's dig into how a really key tool, the national referendum, was used to stretch out that mandate. So here's the question, right? The Constitution says 5 years. That means the term should have ended in 1997. So how on earth did it get stretched all the way to the year 2000? The answer, based on the official record, was a referendum. Here's how it went down. In March 1995, a couple of years before the term was said to expire, a vote was put to the people. The question was simple. Should the president's term be extended? The answer came back yes. And that pushed the next election out by 3 whole years, all the way to 2000. All right, so once that extended first term finally wrapped up, an election was held on January 9th, 2000. And what happened? Karimov was reelected for a second term. This time, though, he was running as the nominee of a different party, the newly formed Fida Party. But hold on, the story of these extensions isn't over yet. Not by a long shot. During this second term, another 2 years got tacked on. So, how did that happen? Well, this next extension used a totally different playbook. A referendum in 2002 didn't just add a bit of time to the current term. It actually changed the rules of the game. It increased the constitutional length of all presidential terms from 5 years to 7. And the immediate effect of that? It tacked on 2 extra years to the term that was already in progress, pushing the end date from 2005 all the way to 2007. Okay, this brings us to our next part, and this is where we get into what's probably the most, let's say, complex mechanism in this whole story, the idea of a constitutional term reset. So, just before the 2007 election was supposed to happen, a really fundamental change was made to the Constitution. And we're not just talking about another extension here. This was a complete redefinition of how presidential terms were even counted. So, the key concept to understand is this phrase you see here, "Muddatlar nollaştırıldı." What does that mean? It literally translates to, terms were reset to 0. Now, according to the source, the legal thinking went like this. Because the Constitution itself had been updated, all the presidential terms served before that update, well, they just didn't count towards the term limit anymore. It effectively wiped the slate clean, allowing the incumbent to run for what was now, legally speaking, a brand new first term. So, what was the real-world effect of this term reset? Well, 2 more elections followed. First, in 2007, Karimov ran for what was now legally considered his first 7-year term, and he won with 88.1% of the vote. Then, when that term was up in 2015, he was re-elected again, this time with over 90% of the vote.
All right, so after 26 years, this incredibly long tenure does eventually come to an end. And in our final section, we're going to look at that transition to a new administration back in 2016.
You know, when you look back, you can really see the whole arc. It starts in the Soviet era, gets cemented in 91, extended by that first referendum in 95, extended again by the rule-changing referendum in '02, and then completely reset before the 2007 election. It's a path that stretches for 26 years, shaped by this very specific sequence of political and legal moves. The event that triggered the leadership change was sudden. On September 2nd, 2016, the official record states that President Islam Karimov passed away due to a serious illness. And with that, his 26-year tenure came to an end. So in the wake of the president's death, a new election was called pretty quickly to figure out who the country's next leader would be. The vote was set for December 4th, 2016.
And the winner of that election, it was the acting Prime Minister Shavkat Mirziyoyev. He was nominated by the Liberal Democratic Party, and he won the presidency with 88.61% of the vote. This officially marked the beginning of Uzbekistan's second administration. So what's the big takeaway from all this? We've walked through a presidency that was shaped by elections, yeah, but also extended by referendums and completely redefined by this unique constitutional reset. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What does this pattern, all based on the official record, show us about the actual mechanics of power and political continuity? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.